Welcome to Behind the ABA Talk podcast, where we have heart to heart conversations with ABA experts, thought leaders, and changemakers. Each episode unpacks the stories, insights, and behind the scenes realities that shaped our experts' professional journeys. I'm your host, Lisa Gurdin, founder of LSGurdin Consulting, and I have a question for all of us to consider. Do you want to dive into the world of AI to do your work faster and with less response effort, but you don't know where to start and you are worried about falling into ethical pitfalls? I don't know about you, but my answer is definitely yes. Fortunately for us, we have Jennifer Magnuson here to share her recommendations on how behavior analysts can responsibly integrate emerging technologies into their practice. And I think the conversation will be relevant for professionals and across disciplines. Jen will be presenting this topic on April 3rd as part of the LSGurdin Consulting CE program. She is a board certified behavior analyst with over 20 years experience supporting individuals with autism and developmental disabilities. And she currently serves as chief of staff at Run the Gamut, a nonprofit that supports young adults with autism in their transition to adulthood. Jen, I am so happy you're here today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So if you could share your journey in ABA, that would be wonderful. Let's start there.
Great. Well, it started with a puppy, which I think is fun. When I was a junior in high school, I did the thing where you go to your guidance counselor and they have you take a quiz to tell you what you should be when you grow up. And my quiz told me that I should be a cable truck repair man
Oh,
person.
that's a new
Which
one.
I don't know what I answered on the quiz that gave me that result, and I often wonder what would have happened if I went that direction, but I didn't. But I came home, and that same day we had gotten a puppy. It was like the day that we picked him up. He was this like adorable little black Labrador retriever, just like this chunky little, like how could you not fall in love with it? And the person who we adopted the dog from gave us a calendar that was, I think it was like a fundraiser from an occupational therapy association that each month was a picture of a lab, but they were supporting in various capacities people with disabilities. So opening drawers or sidewalk assistance or all the different ways that service animals can support people. And so I was like, well, my guidance counselor wants me to drive a cable repair truck, but this looks like a lot more fun. And so kind of that moment, just being like this cute puppy and realizing that that could be a tool that helps people, really kind of started me on this career path. So I went to school for psychology, did kind of all of those things. And then when I was graduating from my undergrad program, I was really kind of like, well, what's next? And the choice was to either move back home, which I didn't necessarily want to do, or go to grad school. And so I was very fortunate to find at the time that the May Institute was sponsoring a program with
Mhm.
Northeastern University. So I was able to work and get really good kind of supervised fieldwork experience while also taking classes at Northeastern. So I did that program, not really knowing a whole lot about what ABA was. I just kind of jumped into it, but really fell in love with the field. The students that I had there, the way that I was learning in class, really practical, tangible, hands-on things that I literally was taking into my classroom the next day, and seeing student success with, really just, I think, solidified that this was the field that I wanted to be in and working in. So I started there. I worked in a lot of different settings. I really wanted to I jumped into the field really young and really early, so I wanted to kind of explore different settings. So I actually went and worked at a hospital. I worked in a couple of different school settings and in some different agencies. I did a little bit of everything to get to where I am today, which I really kind of came full circle and reconnected about 2 years ago with one of my friends from grad school. And she was at the very beginning of building this new transition program. And so I partnered up with her, and we've spent the last 2 years really thinking about and intentionally designing a program that supports young adults as they're transitioning out of their high school programs and into adulthood. And so we're really thinking about how we can use principles of behavior analysis to create this environment that really supports that transition from high school programs to really the ultimate goal is employment, and independent living with the supports that our students need. So I'm really excited to be where I am today, and I feel like a lot of what I did early on has really kind of has built to this point right now.
That's amazing. I think we almost overlapped at Northeastern back at the
So close.
we were
Yeah.
so close in the MAVA program, and I remember being in grad school also like with light bulbs like kept going off in my head like, ooh, that's what that is. Ooh, that's what that's called, right? Like, and then using what we just learned. I had that same experience and just really falling in love with the field as well. So when you think about where you are today in adult services, which is amazing, and I've seen what you guys have built, and it really is an impressive place and an impressive program. What for you does this world of adult services, which is, its own thing, different from, school-based services, what do you love about it? What is reinforcing for you, and what's your why of what you're doing right now?
Oof, that's a big question. I think, my first answer is the students. I'm calling them students, they're young adults.
Mhm.
Um, but they're so cool. They're just, they're fully formed people by the time they leave
Mhm.
school, and they know what they want, and they definitely know what they don't want. And being able to think about work with them in a way that's partnership and not, like a traditional teacher student model, but really just thinking about like you're a person with a goal, and
Mhm.
I get to support you in reaching that goal. Um, I think is really exciting. And it's something that I think working with adults in particular, you're really making some meaningful steps for people, and really connecting them to a higher quality of life, which I think is kind of the center of all the work that we're doing. Um, I think my why has expanded though too now. It's less about just kind of helping individual people meet individual goals, and it's more about kind of creating a network and a community that can really kind of just embrace inclusion and really embrace this idea that people with autism have so much to contribute to the workforce, to the community, and kind of just building out a world where that's a like commonly known thing. And that feels like really meaningful work that we're doing at Run the Gamut right now. We've been going to events at the State House. We've been kind of partnering with different agencies, and different kind of advocacy groups. And it's really exciting to see the pockets of work that are happening everywhere. And I really hope, and I feel like part of what we're trying to do is bring all those communities together. And so it doesn't feel like little pockets in isolation, but it feels like a whole network of people doing really good work together with kind of shared and common missions. So I think I have like a new why, in this kind of phase of my career, just because it's been so
Sure.
exciting to see all that work come together.
Absolutely. And there's so much value to creating partnerships on so many levels. I mean, you mentioned the partnership with the students, with the young adults. You have it run the gamut. I think there's partnerships with families, partnerships with community and advocacy organizations, and other people doing amazing things. And it's so great to see, not only see all that happening, but really be a part of that and a force to help move that forward. So it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah, definitely.
So seeing where you started with this idea, the puppy kind of
Mhm.
sparked your journey, and where you are today, what would you tell your younger behavior analyst self?
Oh, um, slow down, right?
Yes.
Like I think just
Yes.
take the time to really understand before jumping into action. I think, early on it was, here's a problem, here's an intervention, do it quick, right? Like fix the
Yes.
problem. kind of just react to what's happening, and you have all these tools, so use them.
Yes.
uh, and I think I'm grateful for the direction the field has moved in terms of kind of cultural competency and compassionate care, and really just think about the context that the person is
Mm-hmm.
in.
Yes.
And think about
Yes.
the impact that your work might have not only on that person, but the other people kind of in their circle, and make sure that what you're recommending or what you're implementing or what you're doing is really in line with what that context is. I think,
Yes.
this is not a one size fits all world. And so our work can't be either. And so I think I would just go back and tell myself, let's just slow it down and make sure we really are fully understanding before we're jumping into
Yes.
action.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so important. And it's often a place we miss, a piece we miss because everyone around us and ourselves want to fix the problem, right? And they look to us to fix that problem. And it isn't a problem that we should react to. We should respond with thoughtfulness, and taking that pause is so valuable. Absolutely. Um, and so on April 3rd, you're going to do a
Yeah.
CE.
Yeah.
And you are going to talk to us about specific strategies for how we can use AI with the goal of using it for efficiency, right? And how we can do that while maintaining our professional integrity and person centered values and all of the things, and not get kind of sucked into the efficiency of it while
Mhm.
forgetting the ethical impact and the ethical considerations, right? Because I think it's easy. It's so easy to use
Mhm.
and to get sucked into that space. And so
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about that. I'm wondering how AI has become kind of a focus in your work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mm, to tell the story, I have to start by admitting an embarrassing mistake that I made. I was using AI, and let's see, it was maybe about 3 years ago. I was leading the clinical team at a human services agency, we had about 500 direct care staff working directly with our students or clients. And I was leading a clinical team, and I wanted to develop some really meaningful, like mini micro trainings. Like, can you put together a 10-minute training on how to use an AAC device for modeling, right? I wanted my SLPs to kind of develop that content and then go take it out and do it. I asked my mental health counselors, can you develop, 15-minute training modules on trauma-informed practices that you can do, like things in the moment that you can do, and take it out there. And so I kind of had an outline of all the different types of trainings that I wanted people to do. And I was sending off emails, right? I'm just multitasking, working quickly. I'm at my desk, sending out emails, to my speech person. Can you put together this training? To my senior BCBA, I wanted them to do a mini module on the dimensions of reinforcement, right? It's not just good enough to deliver reinforcement. You have to think about how and what and how long from when the behavior happened to when you deliver the reinforcer, right? So I really quickly just wanted her to put together this training on the dimensions of reinforcement. I was newly experimenting with the use of AI. And I thought, instead of crafting the perfect email, I just typed into chat really quick. Can you write an email to my senior BCBA asking her to put together a 20-minute training on dimensions of reinforcement? Copy, paste, send. Literally 2 minutes later, she writes back, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, what do you mean? You're my senior BCBA. How do you not know what the dimensions of reinforcement are? So I went back to my email, and chat very confidently decided to list out the 4 dimensions of reinforcement within the body of this email that I sent without fully critically reading. And they were completely wrong. They sounded great, but they were not the ones that we know and love and use. And so I totally just had this moment where I was like, whoa, I just 100% trusted this system that I literally know nothing about, and sent off an email with totally incorrect information. And then, that moment has just stuck with me. It's so tempting to use it. And it speaks so authoritatively, and it almost always tells you yes. And so I realized in that moment that at first I want to just throw it out and be like, okay, I'm done with it. It's not going to work. And then I was also like, it's not going anywhere. So instead of just throwing it out, I realized I really needed to understand how it works in order to be able to use it. And so I spent some time over the last few years really just learning kind of the background of what it is and what it means, or how it gets to the answer that it gives you for things. And understanding that gives you kind of an ability to use it as a tool. And I think, there's lots of like time saving, efficiency things that it can do for us. And there's a lot of concerns to be held with it. So I think it's an important conversation that we're seeing a lot. And so I'm looking forward in April to be able to talk a little bit more about it and share some more of that experience with everybody in your CE group.
Yes, absolutely. There is so much to talk about. What what would be one way that you've used AI successfully? Where you were like, yes, I got this is what AI can do for me.
I think I use it as an iterative tool, meaning I never accept the first thing that it gives back to me. But through feedback and kind of back and forth processes, you can get to the finished product that you like. And so I think a lot of it is kind of giving it really good and well-crafted prompts. And that's some
Mm.
of what we can talk about on the third, to make sure that you're giving it the right information and that it's looking at the right thing. Right. So
Ah,
that day when I sent off that email, well, I shouldn't have said draft an email on the dimensions of reinforcement. I should have said, pull up the peer-reviewed research article by Neef and Lutz from 2004 that outlines the 4 dimensions of reinforcement. Use those to write an email, right? So a lot of
ah.
it is about giving it the right information or giving it the context that it needs to be able to do the job well. And learning those and kind of learning kind of there's formulas for how you craft your prompts. And if you can do that and then think critically about the responses that you get, you'll be a lot more successful with it.
So interesting. So interesting. Um, so when we talk about the concerns, what
Yeah.
are a few of the main concerns that you see with regards to ethical use of AI in our practice?
Yeah. I mean, confidentiality and privacy is the obvious one, right? Like don't put student names into chat.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't do that. Don't put any identifying information in there. I think that's one that people are pretty aware of. I think this idea of accuracy is really important to think about. Are you double checking? If it's giving you sources, are you actually clicking and looking at the sources it's giving you to make sure that one, those sources exist, and two, they say what it summarized it to say. So thinking about the reliability and really critically thinking about the information it gives you. Um, I think one that's really tempting is to think about using it to expand your scope of competence. So I know early on and in a lot of kind of ethics conversations as behavior analysts, I think we do a really nice job of talking about operating within your scope of competence.
Mm-hmm.
And if a case seems outside of it, find somebody, right? Refer it out,
Right.
do your own professional learning, right? Like don't operate outside of your scope of competence. Um, I think chat is a really kind of tempting avenue to say, this one feels a little bit out of reach for me, but what would you do? And it tempts you to maybe expand a little bit beyond what your kind of current scope of competence is. So I think we need to be really careful about, are we using it to support the work that we know how to do, or
Mm.
are we pushing boundaries a little bit with it? Because I think that's an area that I would want to recommend people be careful with, and making sure that you're still seeking either that consult or that referral or really credible professional learning, and not just saying like, as a BCBA, what would you do if, and then kind of incorporating that into your repertoire. So I want to be careful about that. And then last one that I think is important to think about is just the bias that is inherently in a lot of the large language models. So they're only as good as the data that they're trained on. And this is a little bit of what I'll talk about on April 3rd, but they're not brains, they're not critical thinkers, they're data analysis, right? So they get data and then they spit out more data. And so if you're asking it questions, it will give you your answers with whatever bias is in the data set it was trained on. One that I think about as a behavior analyst a lot is there are a few research studies out there that have looked at the results of functional analysis or functional assessment across kind of a larger population, right? So there's one study that looked at, I think, 160 some individuals or behavioral assessments, and they found that, escape was the maintaining variable for, I think, like 30%. Attention was like another 30%, but only 9 or 10%. I need to look up the article. Only 9 or 10% of the behaviors were maintained by tangible function, right? Which for that 160 population, that was the breakdown of function. If chat has that information in it, it is going to make an assumption that 30, 30, and 9% of cases line up with those functions. So if I plugged in my kid and my information, it's probably going to bias its response toward an escape or attention function and not that tangible function, just because I've told it, or the training model has told it, that it's more likely to be attention than tangible, which maybe it is, but for this individual, I don't want that bias in my interpretation of results. So I think if people are starting to use it to analyze data or to kind of help with clinical decision making, that's really dangerous territory, especially if we're thinking about bias that is introduced in that training set, and then in the responses that it's giving us. So that's, I think, a big part of what we'll be talking about on the 3rd, is really being careful not to let that bias influence clinical judgment.
Yes, it's sort of like adding bias on top of bias, right? Because
Yeah,
we come to the table with biases. Everybody
right.
does, right? So then you're adding computer based bias,
Uh,
technology based bias on top of our own biases. And that's like a lot to filter through, I think. It's
mhm.
just, it's a lot, which is what I think, all of these things you're mentioning makes people very, very nervous. And I think you're also, when you talk, I like what you said about um, using AI to help us do what we know how to do
Yeah,
better, or use it in a different type of uh, using it as a tool to do what we
yeah.
do, right? And not to try to do something different. And I really, really appreciate that. That makes sense to me. So what would be one way do you feel like we could, we're not going to put clinical information and use it to guide clinical decision making? What do we use it for? Like, what's an example of what we would use it for?
Oh, there's so many things. It's a lot of time saving, right? So think about in your clinical practice, where are the places that you lose a lot of time,
Mm,
right? What are the things we're doing that take the time away from the stuff you really like to do? And honestly, it sounds simple and easy, but I think the material making is such a huge
yes.
time suck. Um, we have here at Run the Gamut, we have a lot of kind of experiential learning spaces. And we have one room, I know a lot of programs do this, but we have one room that's set up like a stock room. So, I spent like 2 months
Yes.
saving up all my cereal boxes and yogurt containers and all that kind of stuff. And we've built this room. It looks like a store or a stock room.
Yes.
And so one of the job simulations that our students do is order fulfillment, right? So when I do an online order at Target and I go pick it up and they bring it out to me, somebody went through the store and shopped for all the things at my cart. And so I wanted to create different order fulfillment slips for our students to take one, practice with, and go. But I knew I would need a lot of them for built-in generalization, for to keep it varied, so they don't just memorize the slip and grab the same thing every time. So I just made a list of all of the things in our stockroom, and then I put it into chat. And I said, I need 200 order slips that use, 8 to 12 items each, varied across this list. Some order slips should have an item I don't have that the student could make a substitute. Like, I gave it rules about what I wanted. And in 2 minutes, I had 200 order slips that I literally could just copy, paste, and print out. And so that whole exercise took me, what, 5, 10 minutes? When, 10 years, I would have sat there in a Word document typing out yogurt,
Right.
cereal,
Right.
bar detergent. Next one, like it's just, there's so much just
Yes.
time you can save. Some of the image generation technology or work is getting pretty good. So if you're writing a social story, you can say, generate an image that shows two 8-year-old boys on a playground arguing over a soccer ball, and it will do that for you. Again, you have to be good about your prompts to get what you want, but the time that I used to spend literally just searching Google Images, trying to
Yes.
find like a palm tree with a white background or whatever, because I needed it for some kind of, training program or something. Um, Now it can just generate the image that you want. So time saving and material making, I don't think can be
Yes.
overlooked because of just how much time we spend on that and how specific you can be about it. That's not as like fun and exciting as some of the other uses. Um, but I think it's one that a lot of might resonate with a lot of people.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I mean, my mind is being, kind of blown away a little bit of like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Oh yeah, and that
Mhm.
material making, or to me, I've been playing around with it with flowcharts, putting in a step by step of what staff should be doing to support students and coming up with a visual, right? So that's something that AI can do, right? And the material making, I mean, for me to make a flowchart, it would take me a very long time and I'd start over about 15 times because I'm not getting
Yep.
it the way I want it to look,
Yeah.
and what I want to say, how I want it to look. So I, I just appreciate that so much. And I'm so excited about hearing more on April 3rd. And you've given us a lot of teasers as we've talked,
Yeah.
little nuggets of what we can expect. Is there one other kind of primary message or primary piece of information we can look forward to?
Yes. So I did a thing for this that I'm a little bit excited about. I, you know, a big part of behavior analysis is being conceptually systematic, right? Building on
Yes,
the work that's been done before us. But this is new. I can't go back 30 years and see what
right.
people were doing. But we do have, 5, 10, 15 years of research, both within and outside of our field. So I actually did a little lit review. I spent an afternoon kind of combing through, and I have about 400 articles that
Wow.
I kind of pulled from the literature that all have
Yes.
some kind of connection to AI or large language models, because I wanted to see, there's a lot of, like me, people doing continuing ed and talks about AI in your practice. But I wanted to go back to the peer-reviewed literature and see what's happening there, to help us start to begin this idea of conceptually systematic application of
Yes.
AI into behavior analysis. And so I have some really nice takeaways just from that exercise
Right.
that I'd like to share with the group to give us just that kind of strong foundation to start our conversation with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the innovative way that you are taking our science and our approach and placing it here in understanding AI, using
Mm,
our paradigms, and so that we can use it, like I said, in a very ethical way. And I think one of the things that's important as well is thinking about the human piece of it, right? So as we use AI, making sure we're also, like you said, use it as a tool. And we are really focusing on the human piece of what we're doing and continuing that emphasis on helping people, make those connections, find community, reach their goals, and just experience meaningfulness in their life, whether they're kids or adults. And
absolutely. Yeah, that's it.
that's it,
Right?
right?
That's what we do the work for. So if there's a tool that helps me do it better and more efficiently, that's great. And caution, we're needed.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm excited once again to hear your talk and to be able to do things more efficiently, to focus on, like you said, the things we love to do
Yeah.
as practitioners. So um, thank you so much for being here, Jen. I really appreciate it. And I've learned so much just within this conversation, and we'll be adding to it on April 3rd. And this has been Behind the ABA Talk podcast with Lisa Gurdin and our wonderful guest, Jennifer Magnuson. Thank you so much for giving us an ethical approach to AI so we can be more efficient in our work without all of the worries. And be sure to join us for Jen's upcoming LSGurdin Consulting CE event on April 3rd from 12 to 1:30 Eastern. And if you miss it, no worries. You can always watch it and earn CEUs live or on demand. You can go to www.lsgurdinconsulting.com to learn more about these meaningful continuing education events. Be sure to check out the on-demand library and our newly launched RBT modules for PDUs. And those modules are also intended for support staff who are working in schools and agencies and across all different settings. Thank you to our CE partners and sponsors, Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, Lab Collaborative, and Accept Collaborative, and a special thank you to my podcast producer, Cole Asher Hoffman. See you all next time.